up here.
There we go.
That could have been disastrous. Good thing I'm wearing something. Thanks.
That was my next question. All those wearing pants, put your hands up.
Okay, we need to be careful about how we go down this road.
Yeah. The slippery slope.
All righty. There we go.
Trying to get it to.
You're trying to be able to see your other screen so that you can see.
Yes.
You have to minimize up in the top right-hand corner so you can see the screen in behind, and you sort of have to toggle back and forth from that. I actually brought my iPad so I could have two screens, but I don't know if, unless Kim Westgate could get it logged on to her other computer.
Oh, well, I know last time we did this, I actually had a split screen. I could see both fairly well. So just trying to work on how that happened.
Oh.
I can only see the chief right now.
So you probably have the other view at the side.
You can get the gallery view in the upper left corner, right? Or upper right corner. I mean.
So you probably have the other view at the side.
You can get the gallery view in the upper left corner, right? Or upper right corner, I mean.
So you probably have the other view at the side.
Everybody's back now.
You can get the gallery view in the upper left corner, right? Upper right corner, I mean.
So you probably have the other view at the side. Well, I'm trying to.
No.
You can get the gallery view in the upper left corner, right?
Oh my God.
No. Does it have something to do with the live on YouTube? There. Okay, are we good now? Is that better? There's no echo yet, but if I start talking back to myself, then I'll know that it's not working. No, I had to mute it on the special or on YouTube. There we go. Try again. Madam Mayor. Okay, so can everybody hear me? A little bit louder. I've got some nodding of heads, so that's good. Okay, so it is 6:31, so we'll call this meeting to order. And before we start the meeting, I just wanted to read a little something just so that all the participants that are watching the council meeting know how things will go and set the tone for the meeting. So I'd just like to remind everyone that as we get underway, that everyone will be muted with the exception of the chair. When council members wish to speak, the chair will recognize you, and I would ask that you wait a second or two before you speak to ensure that your microphone is turned on. And we do this just so that we don't have a whole lot of background noise if you happen to be, if something's going on behind you. Finally, I would like to remind that council members that when we do the voting, that you clearly show your hand in the screen and leave your hand visible for several seconds so that I can indicate who's a yay and who's a nay, and then I'll indicate what the outcome of the voting is. And for the people who are attendees, the video picture will not be displayed. You will be muted and not be able to unmute yourself. As this is a special meeting of council, there will be no questions/input from the gallery or the attendees at this point. Just prior to the in-camera portion of the meeting, we will take a brief recess, and staff will be removing those attendees so they will not have access to the in-camera meeting. So once people are removed, they will not be able to rejoin. Everything will be published after the fact, so the clerk will make sure that the YouTube live stream will still be there for people to refer back to. So with that, I'll ask for any declarations of conflicts of interest or general nature thereof. Please signify now. Does anybody have a conflict? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move forward with number 3, other business items for discussion. And the motion that's on the floor is moved by Councillor Foti, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council approve the operating and capital work as outlined in the report due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that any of the items included be brought back to Council for consideration and approval before the work can proceed. So with that, is there any discussion on this motion? Councillor Foti? Oh, we need to unmute him. There we go.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So you're open to questions now about the subject?
Absolutely.
Okay, I would direct this one to our Director of Operations, Adam Goheen. On the operations, the very first operations outline with regards to granular programming, the budget versus the new budget amount, there's a huge discrepancy there of 91.9. Is that just a misprint in math, or can you clarify what that difference would be?
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. And Your Worship, through you, Treasurer Tyndall and I were talking about that earlier. It is a typo, and so the 2020 approved budget sits at about 220,000 for the program, and we were proposing, the intent there was to propose to take the $200,000 out of that program for this year, and just leave enough money in that fund for our troubled spots and some spot top up of limestone. So it is recommended as a deferral for that program for this year, and we can bring that back in subsequent budget years. But yes, we do apologize, Councillor Foti. That was a bit of a typo in that report.
Councillor Foti, there's also another typo. Director Tyndall has her hand up. Go ahead. Oh, there.
Through Your Worship, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. That was an error on my part. So that changes that total in that operations table to 256,800. And then on the page before the summary table, the total operating savings is now $363,350. So I apologize for that. There's also a small error on page 8 in our capital table. The math, the total's wrong. It's out $7,500. So the total capital projects proposed to be deferred is actually $716,500. And if anybody has any questions, I can send that out in an email just to try to clarify again. I apologize for those errors.
Councillor Foti, do you want to speak again?
I just want to repeat, if the treasurer wouldn't mind repeating that last number and where it fit in here. The error on page 8.
So on page 8 of 10, at the bottom of the capital table, there's a total right now of $724,000. When you add those numbers up, it actually should be $716,500.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gorell. You're unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. And to you, Your Worship, when I read through the total document, I see, and I'm just confirming my thinking here, I'm seeing cuts of 363,000 odd. I'm seeing lost revenue of 112,000 odd for a net reduction of 250, $250,000. Does that sound correct to our treasurer?
Madam Treasurer? There we go. She's off. You're unmuted, Kate.
Okay, thank you. Through Your Worship, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions in regards to the report and the projects contained therein that have been either deferred or postponed for the time being. Councillor Maybe, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. It does look like there is a reduction in our total cost of roughly 1.2 mil, how my math kind of goes. And I know there's some leeway there yet in how things actually operate and whether we get back to a normal sooner than later and how that will play into these numbers. But looks like a fairly decent job on how to reduce our costs and our output and still continue the service that our residents require. Thank you.
Councillor Jameson, then Councillor Garrell.
Your Worship, now, oh, I'm on, okay. Your Worship, to Brian Maybe's point, Councillor Maybe's point, we are not looking at this for the first time, and we did task the staff some weeks ago to work on this, which they have been doing diligently. And I think it's, for public consumption, it's important to understand that we're not just simply throwing numbers around and issuing press releases. This has been a very hard task for our people, and we wanted to do this in a way that perhaps was below the radar, in my view, to keep it below the radar until we were sure that we would get a report from staff that would be a strategic approach to reduction that allows us some flexibility on the other side. So I'd just like to congratulate staff on a job well done on this part of the program. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Garrell?
In adding to that, and through you, Your Worship, I just wanted to point out that $363,000 is 3.6% of our operating budget, and that's off page number 2 of 10. I do have a question. Because we're being asked, we are being asked to approve the operating and capital work as outlined. If in the next week, because we're going to have another council meeting and we have other sensitive issues coming up that will be discussed in camera, which would have an influence on this operating budget. So would we be approving this document? And would it be open? It would have to be open for amendment or additions, it strikes me. So I'm not confused. I'm questioning whether we should be accepting this for information tonight, because we do have council meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, and there could be additions to this, which I am not wanting to talk about at this second.
So Director Tyndall has something to say. Her hand is up.
Thank you, through Your Worship. So, I mean, procedurally, the clerk may have better direction in terms of the actual resolution or the approval tonight, but I think what we're trying to do is just make sure that as staff, we understand that council is an approval, that what's outlined in this report is what we've proposed to basically put on hold or defer. And what I would propose is, once we kind of get through this pandemic to a point where we have a better understanding of what the financial implications are, when I would actually come back with a detailed report for council approval, because I would like it in the council resolution to actually do a budget amendment showing what was approved budget and what we are saying we're going to change the budget, so I can actually update the financial software. And I wouldn't do that without a council resolution with a detailed resolution showing exactly where we're amending the budget. So this is more of this is what the direction is we anticipate going, but I think every week I'll be bringing this report back and it could change as well. So through Your Worship, again, if you have more comment to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Director. So I think in discussions over the last few weeks, like Councillor Jameson said, you know, this has been an ongoing document that we've seen a number of iterations of, and they've gone back a couple of times and sharpened their pencils a couple of times, taking into account new information as it's come about. But I think that as council, because it's our purview to oversee the budgets, as that's our job, that it's up to us to provide direction to say we are in agreement with what's being proposed for the time being, not to say, notwithstanding that there isn't potentially more things to come down the road, for a number of reasons, whether it be additional funding we may get or less funding we may get, and we might have to make further cuts. It's a very fluid issue. So it's a good point, Councillor Gorell, that, you know, this is just one piece of it, but very likely we'll have to come back with further amendments or changes, either positive or negative, to this budget, but that it will be a strange year for that, because usually we fix it and not forget it, but use it as the guiding document. But because the target keeps moving when it comes to revenue and how we're funded, lots of different programs that, you know, would have been in place but can't be now, and businesses that are challenged, as well as residents to potentially pay tax bills, we have to be ever mindful of the fact of how that might affect our revenues. So are there any other specific questions in regards to the tables that have been presented by the directors, and specifically Director Tyndall? Deputy Mayor? Go ahead.
Just to comment, Your Worship, that I think it was a great report, and then I think due diligence has been done. You know, we were looking for a lot of things to happen since this COVID issue. You know, people without jobs, people perhaps not able to pay taxes, people doing a lot of things. But Kate, I appreciate all your effort in this, and everyone else who was involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further, Councillor Gorell?
Just following up on Deputy Mayor Lackey's comments and Councillor Jameson, I'd just like to point out that for the public out there, this is a the deferrals and so on represent a $900,000 number. It's not insignificant, and reading through the report, one might not get the full picture here, but between capital project deferrals and whatnot, it is a significant number. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Gorell. And I think that's why it's taken a few weeks to get to this point, because trying to leave no stone unturned, but we know that as things progress, we'll probably be faced with further challenges. Are there any further comments or questions in regards to the report as presented? Seeing none, I'll just reiterate the motion so that everybody knows what they're voting on. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council approve the operating and capital work as outlined in the report due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that any of the items included be brought back to Council for consideration and approval before the work can proceed. So all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify. Everyone, yep. And all those opposed? No hands. Carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay. Too many pieces of paper on my desk. So the next report is in regards to fire services, and the motion that's on the floor is moved by Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Fody, that Council directs staff to enter into a contract with Emergency Management AMP Training EMT for the purpose of completing a review and modernization of the fire service as outlined in report CBS-026-19 to be funded by a government grant. Fire Chief, would you like to give us a little bit of background on this and some high-level points, and then we'll have discussion.
Certainly, through your worship. Back in November, I believe it was, the province came forward with the grant applications. The fire service this year had a master plan that was due to be changed or updated, and we took the opportunity to make a submission, and through Kim Goodman, did a great job, and we secured a grant up to an amount of $85,000. We put it out on for tender and RFPs. Came back, we had 3 submissions. One was significantly above the $85,000. The other 2 came in within the range of our money that was available from the government. And we went through and scored those 2 proposals. That was done with 4 individuals. Kim Goodman, myself, the deputy chief, and Kim Nichols all scored the two remaining RFPs. Scoring was all independent. The outcome came back very close in some instances. Others were a little bit spread out, just the individual perception on the document. Although it's not the lowest bid, the EMT's proposal was a mid-bid of the three, and it reflected more of the analysis of our particular structure and best suited the needs for the complete fire master plan, community risk assessment, and the business plan for the regional training center. And highlighted efficiencies throughout the department. The timeline for completion was well within the province's requirements. Therefore, we put the proposal forward that EMT be the selected consultant.
Thank you very much, Chief. Are there any questions in regards to this report? Councillor Maybe, then Councillor Gorell.
Your worship, and through you, I was just wondering, have we received that grant money with the COVID-19 crisis that's happening? Just wondering if any of that has been clawed back at all.
I think Ms. Goodman can answer that. Or she's got her hand up.
Yes, thank you for the question, and through you, your worship. Prior to, and as part of, prior to actually even staff vetting the applications, we actually did reach out to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who is responsible for management and administration of this particular grant fund. And we did receive written confirmation that the funding was still available in its full amount. And as of that particular date, the deadline for the final product and final reporting has not changed. If anything, they expect that that date would be pushed out, and if so, that that date will be readily communicated with us.
Okay, so any further questions, Councillor Baby? Nope. Okay, Councillor Gorell.
So that funding then, and through you, your worship, that funding is additional to the money that is currently sitting in our working fund and our modernization fund. It's in addition to that. Is that correct?
I believe so. Maybe Director Tyndall can verify that.
And second, just the last question. A few weeks, months ago, it was announced at county level that they were doing, it seemed to me, a rather broad county analysis and efficiencies for fire services in general. And I'm wondering, does this one tie into that? Are we going it alone here in that we have 3 fire stations plus a training center? I'm just curious. I know we're a big territory here, and I just wondered, are we part of the county? Thank you.
Chief Lawson, do you want to speak to that?
This is totally independent from the county proposal. They put that in as to look at the county system and a regional fire system, possibly see what the recommendations came back for the county system. This was totally independent of that, and through our own municipality to evaluate our 4 stations and our training center and give us some direction here. We need a risk analysis for our community. We need the master plan for the fire department, as well as the looking forward and efficiencies and so on. So hopefully we get that all through this report.
So I think that answers the question in regards to the additional funds. So I'm fairly certain that that's been answered, so we don't have to go back to Director Tyndall. Councillor Maybe?
Just to follow up on what Councillor Gorell said, so does the will the report actually reflect any tie into the county then? If the county's doesn't tie into ours, is there going to be some overlap in any of the process?
Chief?
That'll be determined, I guess, by the consultant that takes us on, whether the efficiencies will show that the county level may be putting out certain pieces of equipment, possibly supplying us with protective gear through this pandemic, certain things like that, where the municipality doesn't have to fund those events. The other part of it would be the county EMS portion of our what costs for providing oxygen, medical responses, and so on. And they would possibly tie in somewhat with that portion of the county.
Okay. Any further questions in regards to the motion? Deputy Mayor, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to the chief. The fire training facility, I mean, if we didn't use it, we still have to pay the bills for the station, plus we share space with Public Works out there as well. So what would we actually be saving by not using it? Because generally speaking, I believe that, you know, we're hiring someone to do the training, and hopefully the fees pay that portion of it. And then we have meals and we have different things. But at the end of the day, we're still paying Hydro for that building for the fact that it's station and it's Public Works. So is there a savings, or is it like recreation where, you know, other than the fact that I would like to see us keep paying to train our own, you know, would there be any great savings by saying we don't want a fire training service anymore?
Chief, would you like to answer that in a Coles Notes version if possible?
Through you, Your Worship, there is savings to be had. We do have meals. We have instructor fees for out-of-town instructors. The OFM are covering a lot of the costs of instructors at this time. However, the structure of the training plan, when you have a course on there, there are fees, overhead, production costs of materials, and so on. So there would be a substantial savings. Although when the training center is not working as it is right now, with the COVID problem, we are looking at substantial savings there as well, because there's no meals, there's no instructors, there's no facilitating any courses. So we are saving every day that it's down. However, we're not bringing in anything either. And that's the issue that we're having, is the losses on the revenue from the courses that we do put on there.
But the moral of the story is we still have to have the facility anyways for all those reasons that the Deputy Mayor said, right? So
that's right. Exactly.
Okay, Councillor Olkey, you had some questions?
I just wondered, Your Worship, and it's a general question, what would it cost us to send our people away to train them if we did not have our own training center? We could balance that against the so-called loss. And there's another way to look at a balance sheet. There always is. And there's some drawbacks to bringing people in here. There's no real accommodations, no handy accommodations, especially at certain seasons of the year. So there's difficulties with it. But overall, what would be the cost of all the training we've done if we had to send our people away, put them in accommodations, and then the time they lose with their families and whatever? So there's other costs with any kind of training facility and training any kind of organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is a given, that if we're putting our people out, it's also time off work for them, which makes in the travel time. And I believe that one of the main training centers is Gravenhurst, so it's certainly not around the corner. It's a long drive. So based on the motion that's on the floor in regards to awarding this review of the fire service, is there any further questions? Okay, so in regards to awarding this master plan for the fire service, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify. Everybody's good. Anybody opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. Okay, next report on the docket is Operations Report OPR-00920. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council receive Operations Report number OPR-009-20 as information. Discussion on this motion. Anyone? I will add that the IJC came out with a report, I believe it was yesterday, just to add to this, that expectations for water levels are pleasantly not above what they were expecting. We've been fortunate, I believe, because the Ottawa had peaked or crested earlier, so that the outflows through Montreal have been able to stay higher, and with our drier spring season that we've had, has helped us immensely. It's not to say that we're out of the woods and that the water is still not extremely high, but every day that goes by, we're not getting a ton of rain, and I know that it's coming this week, but we're in a better position than we could have been, I guess is probably the main thing to say. So was it Councillor Maybe that put your hand up? Yes. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you. It is good to see that 3,500 bags are already available and maybe already been taken away from the 3 sites, and thank you for getting the 3rd site in place for the cost of 15 grand. And personally, from my notation of my work site, which happens to be in the St. Lawrence at the edge of Lake Ontario, the water level definitely is not up to any sort of level that it was last year. So it's good to see, even with the wind blowing off Lake Ontario, it doesn't seem to encroach too much further than it presently is. And we'll see how many sandbags are actually required. It'll be good if we've only had to use 3,500 this year. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you and all of council. At any one given year, whether it's an anomaly or not, high water typically is 3rd week of June before we hit that. So a lot can happen between now and then. The other issue I have is we're giving out sandbags, and that's great. But if people can't get to their islands to place them, whether they be permanent residents or not, we may have an issue which is larger than us, with insurance companies saying, what did you do to help? And I think that's a discussion for later on, but it's just something to think about, because typically this time of year, it's not high water. Spring is not high water. It comes the end of June at our highest point on the St. Lawrence River. The Rideau Canal can be adjusted. The lakes can be adjusted. The St. Lawrence, I believe, can be adjusted, but that's up to the IJC apparently. So,
well, let's just hope that it continues to go in the positive direction that it's going so far this year, and that we aren't faced with another disastrous year like last year. Further discussion on this motion as presented? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the report as presented? All those opposed? Carried. Okay, so the next as for discussion is boat ramps. So I'll begin the discussion with an update. We had been in contact with a number of agencies, both OPP, CBSA, RCMP, who are enforcing on behalf of CBSA, Canadian Border Services Agency. Essentially, we were anticipating an announcement from the federal government in regards to our federal jurisdiction waterway, the St. Lawrence River. Unfortunately, I heard back from the regional director today at almost noon. They have not been yet provided with an update. That he's also advocated about the urgency and concern of getting some clear direction, and he shared that with his superiors and his senior officials in his ministry. So the challenge being a number of these organizations had advocated to have the boat ramps remain closed and not be open, to limit the amount of recreational boating. Having said that, in the absence of a federal directive we're recommending that the boat ramps on the St. Lawrence be open as of May the 1st. Going forward, we were trying to wait to see if we were going to get a directive from the feds in regards to that, and nothing has come to light. And the OPP marine boat goes in the water as of May 1st. So from a public safety point of view, because that was the other main concern that came out of the emergency management group, was that that if somebody was in distress, it would mean that potentially our first responders would be out on the river trying to help them. OPP did make it clear that if someone was in distress, that they would not tow anybody, and also with the marinas not being open is a further concern. But so for now, it's recommended that the boat ramps on the St. Lawrence be open on May the 1st to facilitate walleye pike season, as well as those who need to get their boats in that are on the mainland that have primary residences. As far as seasonal residences, we do not have any sort of legislation that says they cannot come to their residences, but I will reiterate that the province directive is to stay in place and stay in your primary residence. And if you need to come and fortify your property, if you're coming to the area, please be extremely cautious and not as much as our businesses that are still remaining open would like some patronage, it is where the contact and the transmission can happen. So we ask that you limit that as much as possible. The secondary part of that is that the inland ramps, so the one at Sealy's Bay and the one at Furnace Falls Farm, we would recommend an opening of those on May the 6th. And there's a couple of reasons we would recommend that. And that is Rideau Lakes is also opening theirs up at around the same time, because walleye and pike season opens on the inland lakes and rivers at that point in time. So that is open for discussion. Those are the reasonings and the recommendations that have come from the emergency control group at this point in time. If there's any further discussion, then I'll open the floor. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear the date. It's one of those things. Just because the ramps are open doesn't mean the marinas are. There was some comments out there about marinas conducting business. They're private marinas, and just because boats go in the water doesn't mean that people can get to them. The marinas are closed. Most of the ones in our area have gates. Those who don't have gates basically live at those places. So while I agree that until the province lets off a little bit as far as our social distancing, that's fine. But as far as having the ramps open, it's probably not going to be people from out of town unless they want to go and fortify their residence. So I don't think we're going to see that influx. And I'm very, very glad to hear that we're opening the ramps. And the sooner the better. I mean, if it has to be May 1, it has to be May 1.
Director Goheen, did you want to speak to how that runs out? I know that you have that slated to happen with the cement barriers being removed for the May 1st deadline. Is that correct? It's already in place if we need to pull the trigger?
That's correct, Your Worship. Thank you. So we do have arrangements made to bring the float in and remove them. However, I'm just texting. If we're only going to open the St. Lawrence ramps, then we'll revise our plan a little bit and move them out of the way. And when we get the go ahead, perhaps to move the northern ones, we'll then bring the big trucks in and move them on. You can leave that with me, and so I'll receive the direction to have them removed on Friday morning, and if that suits council, and then the 6th, I guess, for the other ones. That's the direction of council.
Any further discussion or points to be made? Councillor Fody, then Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, perhaps to the Director of Operations. I understand the wherewithal with the federal and inland ramps. Other people are going to be asking, such as cottages and campsites. Are they allowed to do the same? Are they allowed to open their ramps or access to them? Or is this a gray area we're afraid to answer just yet? I don't know. I'm asking.
It's actually not our purview for campgrounds and private businesses. So for example, when the deputy mayor made the comment that some people were commenting that private marinas were operating, if you will, they can't be open to the public is really what it comes down to. And some of these marinas are allowed to be open to deal with emergency services and primary residence holders who use the marina to go back and forth. So they do have that. They're on the non-essential list, if you will. But if you're talking about campgrounds, that's a whole other animal. And campgrounds at this point in time have not been open up. The confusion with all of this that makes it much more difficult to kind of know what's best for everyone. And I realize that this has been a tumultuous time for a number of people for a number of reasons. Least of all are our business owners that have been closed. But for example, the Rideau Canal is closed until May 31st. Parks Canada Islands are closed until May 31st. Provincial parks are closed, I believe, until May 31st. But yet the province, technically, their state of emergency has only been extended till the 11th of May. So there's a lot of different dates floating around, and then you've got the May long weekend in there. And so everybody is trying to be, I think, cautiously optimistic. Ontario has done a reasonable job when it comes to our numbers, but our neighboring province of Quebec has almost double the amount of cases as far as COVID virus cases, and their deaths are significantly higher. But yet, if you look in the paper today, they were talking about the number of deaths that are attributed to long-term care residences as well. So it's hard to wrap your head around all of these different numbers. But campgrounds, back to your point, Councillor Fody, campgrounds are something that are considered non-essential at this point. So unless the provincial directive is lifted prior to that, that'll be up to the provincial government to give that go-ahead. Go-ahead, follow up, and then Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with regards to Quebec, they today announced a number of things they're going to open on Monday, May 4th. The way I see it, they're going to offer to be the canary in the coal mine, if you will, because of their numbers and COVID and how it pertains to them. If they're willing to open up this early, you can be sure Ontario and other jurisdictions will be watching that, how that plays out very closely. And, you know, I wish them all the best, but it's a dangerous precedent. But if they're offering to make that first leap of faith, so be it.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Maybe, and then Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I did read something from the provincial directive earlier today about campgrounds specifically, and that they are not open unless they are primary residence, period, and must be able to self-contain in place. So even their common areas are not to be opened. And that's a document that came out at the first of the week. I just happen to be able to have access to it.
Thanks for sharing that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Did we not declare a state of emergency?
We did.
We did. So two things. One is I appreciate the fact that we're still having these meetings and you still value our opinion. But I think the fact is you have the gavel and you can pretty much do what you want. So, you know, I really appreciate that you're doing this.
Well, I certainly didn't make the decision unilaterally. The emergency control group has been meeting. Well, in the beginning, we were meeting 3 times a week, and then we've been meeting last couple of weeks just once a week. But you know, having the conversations with Canadian Border Security, and that's, you know, we'd like to think that we've been very good neighbors to the U.S., and I think we are very good neighbors to the U.S., and we value our U.S. neighbors that own islands and come here and pay their taxes and what have you. But, you know, it's a very different point of view south of the border and the way that they're approaching this. And so how Canada handles the border itself will remain to be seen, but I know that they're very concerned, and if anybody, and I think Councillor Gorell and I had a conversation not too long ago about this, but the RCMP presence that is around here right now is considerably higher than previous. They are hanging out in Gananoque, they're hanging out in Rockport and everywhere in between. And we have the largest undefended border in the world. And as time wears on, I think that will become a bigger issue. And I think that's why the regional director is expecting some more input from the higher ups. We understand that people are concerned about their properties and want to get to them. But taking into account what's going on in Quebec, what's going on south of the border, and borders are closed for now, but trying to weigh all those options has been a challenge for the emergency control group, but I know that they've all worked hard at trying to bring that information to light. Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to agree with Deputy Mayor Lackey in the sense that this is a ray of hope for some of the waterfront owners, the fact that they can access these boat ramps wherever they may be open. I assume through Director Goodman, there's going to be a press release tomorrow explicitly indicating what dates and which ramps are going to be open so that everybody's under the same understanding as to what's available, what's not, and specify the fact that there's no marinas open for gas and services.
Director Goodman, and then Councillor Maybe.
Absolutely. Through you, Your Worship, actually following the emergency management meeting this afternoon, we have made early strides in starting to pull some of that information already so that we can get that out in a timely manner across all of our media platforms.
Thanks. Councillor Maybe?
Thank you, Worship, through you, and possibly to Ms. Goodman, that also in that statement is all the regular COVID-19 regards of social distancing and staying away, and only family members and people who have self-isolated with you. Just to reiterate, because again, once you open the ramps up, it could change some people's thoughts on what we should or should not be doing.
Ms. Goodman, and then I'll recognize Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Generally, all of the media releases and social media points of contact and whatnot, we tend to try to go back and reiterate the importance of following the guidelines and directions as issued by our public health agencies. This would include one that's going out even tomorrow regarding high water and accessing sandbags and whatnot, that those measures are still important. So we've already gone ahead. Actually, we do have signage that will be posted at our ramps of significant, not huge, but of significant size, reinforcing those sorts of guidelines and recommendations.
Deputy Mayor.
That answered part of my question as far as having the signage, because I think I sent to you, Your Worship, the press release from Frontenac Islands and South Frontenac Township. We're not the first ones by any means. So, and they have done the same thing. They provided photos of the signage that they used. So. I see this as a positive for people as far as recreation, and I think there's more to come.
I will just bookend that by saying I agree with the Deputy Mayor in that I want everybody on the council and administration to be very, not open-minded, what's the word I'm looking for, but cautiously optimistic, because if something does change with that border and the defense of said waterway, we might be looking at different directives from the federal government, depending on what they are concerned with. So, like I said, I'm very appreciative of the staff members who have been digging up this information, working with the CAO. Him and I have, made a number of calls between OPP and county members, town of Gananoque as well. We've all been communicating, trying to stay on the same page. It's very difficult because this was left up to respective municipalities. My main hope is that they don't open up borders too soon, and our Quebec visitors don't come too soon, because that's where we'll have a second wave if there is one. So, Councillor Maybe, and then I'll try to wrap this up.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. and possibly to Mr. Coheen that perhaps moving the barriers out of the way for the remainder of the year might be a better way, because if this COVID-19 reoccurs and we have to shut things down again, we may want them closer at hand than not.
That's duly noted.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I was having that exact same thought as to perhaps we could move them off to the side temporarily and for a little period of time. I'll look into that. It's a fairly good idea, I think.
I'll also be staying in touch with our regional director from CDSA on a regular basis to find out if there's anything we can do to assist them at this point in time. So Councillor Fody, Deputy Mayor again, and then Councillor Grohl, and then we will move on from this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, before we move away from this topic here, under the direction of Kim Westgate and all the directors and the staff, I feel real good as a council member. We've had this emergency in place over a month now. The amount of communication between our office here and the public, I don't think you could have done much more, to be quite frank. I mean, all the publications, whether on radio, newspaper, mail outs, hats off to all of you. You know, the question I keep asking people when I talk about this, do you know somebody in our township that has COVID-19? So far, touch wood as I am right now, I have yet to hear a yes to that answer. So something has been done right. I feel proud of that.
Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Grohl.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, but the concrete barriers, I agree we should probably leave them there in case something changes. The one in Ivy Lee, I was down by there a couple of times today. There are vehicles that have driven out onto the pier to the very water side. So maybe the concrete barrier could be put across, because that's one of our trouble spots that we should not let people onto due to its condition.
That's a good point. Councillor Grohl?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a point here concerning the ramps, but it goes beyond the ramps. And we are a municipality, and we closed the ramps initially under emergency response. And the reason that we were throwing out there was a risk to our emergency responders in terms of that we all get it. Now we've moved into a thought pattern, which I don't care for, and it is this. Now we're talking about, we're listening to Customs Border Service, and with all due respect, that is a border problem. And in terms of ramps, I don't want us to be directed unless they absolutely pass a law that says we have to. I would prefer us to say, fine, you've policed that border on the water for years and years and years and years. And I don't want us to acquiesce to a wish and a desire. And that is, I feel very strongly about that. That's their job. They've been doing it for years. Closing a ramp in Ivy Lee and Gananoque and Rockport and the federal one at Mallory Town Landing, that it may enhance their job, but it takes away from the rights of Canadians. And I don't care for that. Thank you.
I will pass along that information to our regional director. Point is well taken. Okay, so we need to move on with discussion. Deputy Mayor, is there something new you wanted to add?
One.
No, you're good. Okay, go ahead.
Just thank you, Councillor Grohl. Yeah, so we do have a heavy presence out there right now already with our CMP. We're going to have the OPP. So it's really not up to us. You know, if they choose to do that and they're doing something wrong, that's not really our issue.
Okay, and so we'll wrap up this discussion on boat ramps, and I think the consensus is that it's supporting the opening of the boat ramps on the St. Lawrence River for May the 1st, and that boat ramps in the inland lakes would be open on May the 6th. And the hope is that anyone that is coming. We want to limit traffic from outside of the municipality to, or if you are coming, if you can bring all your provisions on your own and you're not putting any, touching any of our surfaces in any of our grocery stores. I know it sounds terrible, and I love our seasonal residents and all the people that come on a seasonal basis, but this virus, we've done a good job so far, and I just don't want to see us lose any ground so that we can actually enjoy a summer and maybe actually hug our friends and be happy and be close, you know, be able to have a beverage side by side. So just from that point of view, we hope that our seasonal residents, please be extra cautious and follow the rules and the guidelines if you are coming to the area. Councillor Grell?
I'm sorry, I have to say this. Seasonal residents have been concerned. Here's another very positive thing about opening up boat ramps. Seasonal tax-paying residents are concerned, and have every right to be, about the condition of their properties. Normally, they'd get out there and have a peek. They might not want to live there, but they might go out for a few hours and assess the problem with the properties. Right now, even though many are Americans, they can still hire people. They still have their caretakers that now can use our ramps because they can't use marinas, private marinas. So that's a very positive thing for the taxpayers on the river or on waterways. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that as well.
Thank you. So we'll move on in the discussion points now that we've exhausted that one, to talking about setting planning meeting dates. And this speaks back to Director Venditti's report that was at the previous meeting about digital participation for planning activities and not delaying once the province starts to open these things up. So I'll turn it over to Director Venditti to make a couple of comments in regards to where you would like to go with this.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of meeting dates, the one thing that we did discuss was council acting as the Committee of Adjustment. So what we'd like to do, if possible, is hold a Committee of Adjustment meeting on May 26th, which is the regularly scheduled date. We would just need to confirm the time with council, so it could be 6:30, the same as a council meeting.
Okay.
And if council is meeting on the regularly scheduled dates in June for council and committee of the whole, we would propose to hold public meetings before each of those council meetings, as we do normally, which would help us clear our backlog. So we would probably need to schedule up to 4 public meetings before each council meeting.
Okay. Well, the main thing about this, which I think is a positive move, and I thank the director for doing her homework, because even before the province had come out with this, Director Venditti had been researching, trying to figure out a way that we could continue to move the process along for the Committee of Adjustment, and she sort of had this groundwork laid out before the province even said, yeah, okay, go ahead. So I appreciate that effort. I would like to get back to a regular scheduled meeting dates, but also be aware that, of course, if we need to meet in between, that's absolutely not a problem. But now that we've sort of figured out the technology thing, and thank you, Madam Clerk, that things are going a little more smoothly, and we know what to expect, and we don't have the feedback, it makes it a little easier to meet. So I'll take discussion in regards to setting these planning meeting dates, and then we'll go from there. So Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Foley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Marnie, will we be given as much advance notice as Committee of Adjustment has? Because obviously we may still have to do site visits, will we not?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Definitely, we will get the information out. We needed to get a meeting date set so that we can start preparing in terms of posting signage on the sites and getting the information out to council so that you can do that. We also want to make sure that we get the reports to you in lots of time so that you have the opportunity to review them. We're going to need to provide you with a little bit of background and orientation because Committee of Adjustment is a little bit different than council, but it's very similar. So we will make sure that we get all of the information out.
Okay. And Councillor Fody?
Thank you. I thought Deputy Mayor had a follow-up.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. No, you're good?
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say I'm finally back on the committee.
Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regards to meetings, our Director of Planning indicated the backlog, which is essential when we do get opened up, what we can do the stepping stones now and get the paper trail moving, if we will, under the Committee of Adjustment and whatever else is required. Ordinarily, we would have had a Committee of the Whole meeting this coming Monday, May 4th, right? Obviously, we might be a little too soon to hold the next meeting. Are we wrong in backing that up 1 week? I haven't got my calendar. That'd be the 11th, I guess, because it would ordinarily been our council meeting. But the point I want to make, I think given this whole situation and the fact that we feel comfortable in the control we have on it right now, it doesn't bother me as a member of council to meet frequently right now. And if something should change, we're already in queue to have a meeting and address it and be on to it as quick as may be. And that voluntary canary in the coal mine situation I alluded to, and maybe changes in provincial or federal guidelines, I think it's pertinent we set up meetings, if not frequently, for the next short period of time anyway, month or two.
So as of right now, I think we had canceled the Committee of the Whole for Monday because we were having this meeting and there wasn't a whole lot between the two, but we would continue on with council, which is the 11th. But then after the 11th meeting, if we felt that there needed to be a meeting between then and the June meetings, the scheduled meetings, that we would have more information closer to that time. I think it also depends on what the province does from the state of emergency point of view, and if we have to make any further concessions or adaptation to how we're delivering services right now. I know that the CAO and the senior management team is already starting to think about what things will look like down the road, and how far down the road, we're not sure. Once we're opening public spaces back up, and as they start to open certain businesses back up, how we put protocols in place to protect the staff and the expectations for staff working in smaller office spaces and all that kind of stuff. Those are all operational issues, but these are things that are on the minds of our senior management for sure. So if the meeting dates, Director Venditti, are you looking to have anything any sooner than that, or do you need to wait till the 26th of, if we have a light meeting, if we have a light meeting agenda for the 11th on council, would you want to have it then?
Now, through your worship, we can't actually have it then because we have notification requirements that we have to meet under the Planning Act. Yeah. So I need to know what meeting dates we're working to so that we can actually start the notification. Some of them require posting in the newspaper with 20 days mail out for others. So I just need to know that we're going to have those regular meeting dates in June together with the one at the end of May so that we can work towards those dates.
So that was May 26th, 2020 yes. Was the first one. And we could aim to have that at 6 or 6:30, whatever the will of council is, to adapt to people's work schedules. Is that satisfactory with everyone? Is there anybody that doesn't work for? We're good. We got thumbs up everywhere. Okay. Oh, awesome. Councillor Fody, did you want to say something, or was that your thumbs up? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll work with May 26th as the planning meeting, or sorry, the Committee of Adjustment meeting. And then go from there based on notices and public meetings and what have you for June. Okay.
Great.
Okay. Any other items for discussion that weren't on the agenda that need to be discussed? If not, I'll just go into a brief mayor's update. It's already been said tonight about how staff have been standing on their head, but I would like to personally thank Steve Donachie, who's come in at the most perfect time in the middle of a state of emergency, trying to get to know both staff from a distance and from individual meetings. It's at socially acceptable distances. And figuring out how we run things here, and I appreciate all the efforts, and he's doing a wonderful job, and I appreciate all of his attention to detail. I'll let the senior management team let you know what they think of them and be nice. But the senior management team have also been working very diligently in regards to these reports, but also just trying to anticipate all the things that are happening or will happen in the short term or the long term is a bit of a guessing game. I'll be quite honest, I've been very preoccupied as of late with the county. We haven't had very many meetings, but there has been a lot of back and forth with other mayors and things going on there. I am concerned. I appreciate Director Tyndall, our treasurer, who has proactively gone to the county to ask to have meetings with the lower tiers, which up until now I don't believe were happening, because I do believe that there needs to be some better cooperation between the lower tiers right now. And when we had our last council meeting, and I think I alluded to it at our last council meeting, was that there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about leniency or changes or really adaptation at the county level, and they're still delivering services on a regular basis, and they haven't really changed their mindset per se. But what I'm quite concerned about is not just our municipality, but all the other member municipalities, as well as the separated municipalities, who will all be under certain pressures because of commercial business challenges, because commercial industrial, but as well the residential piece, where people might have been able to pay their March tax bills, but come the fall, what will happen if they've been laid off for any length of time? And the assistance that they're receiving from the government is certainly good, but not to a level that, if people have to decide whether they're going to feed their families or pay their property taxes, they're going to feed their families. And that is a very realistic thing that we need to be faced with. So I'm challenging the other mayors, and I know that Kate is asking questions at the treasurer level. What things should we be anticipating for changes in revenue streams? And what can we do, if anything, within the Municipal Act as it is right now, or what suggestions could we be making to the province and working with the upper tiers to help alleviate the pressure on our commercial businesses and residents. So I know that we are going to have many discussions about these things over the next coming months, especially in the fall. We are fortunate to have a reasonable reserve situation. There's other municipalities that aren't as fortunate as us, and some other ones have reached out and said, the province will come through. But the one thing that we always must be mindful of is there's only one taxpayer, whether it be in here as our taxpayer or at the provincial level or the federal level. So the money has to come from somewhere, and it'll always come out of the taxpayer's pocket in the end. I just ask that everybody keep a sharp eye on all the documentation that we share over the next few months. And if you hear of anything, any proactive approaches that people are taking, please share them with us. We're quite limited under the Municipal Act. We cannot forgive taxes. We can discuss penalties and interest, but we'll do what we can unless there's something else that's creative that comes out of the provincial directives or funding there. I also would like to point out a couple of wonderful things that are happening in the communities around us. You see a lot of things. This has been a very trying time for people being out of work and trying to take care of themselves, but also take care of their loved ones. A lot of these businesses have stepped up and done some pretty wonderful things. The grocery stores in our small hamlets, as well as in the town of Gananoque, who service a lot of our residences, they're doing everything they can to accommodate seniors' early shopping hours. But things like Wendy's Country Market, the sunflower seed mail out that just happened is just a real bright spot. And I hope that people use those seeds and plant them and watch them grow. And we need the sunshine and the rain to make things grow. So without light, there is no dark, and vice versa. Without dark, there is no light. So we really have to be grateful for all things. But if you notice, there's a sign at the entrance of Lansdowne across from Rapid Valley where not all heroes wear capes, and it's a bunch of stick figures, and it's in the community garden there. And without the people who are delivering the goods, the transports, the logistics, the farmers, the people in the grocery stores, the nurses, the first responders, we're just indebted to them for everything that they've done for us. And every time you see a picture of a person who's wearing PPE and literally has those marks on their faces from wearing it so continuously, you have to feel like, as much as it's hard to be at home, it's the least that we can do for those people. So I'd just like to say thank you for that, and thank you to the staff here who continue to work so diligently trying to keep things moving along here in the township. So thank you. And does anybody have any other updates that they need to pass along? Councillor Jameson.
I appreciate the positivity you've expressed there, and I thank you for that. But am I hearing that, well, maybe I'll put it this way. Could we put a discussion about the county's response to this challenge on our agenda in the next council meeting with respect to any plans they have to be looking at their budget or not? Because I'm getting the feeling that they're operating business as usual, and we aren't, and other municipalities in the county are not. I'm just getting a feeling that we might have a problem in the upper tier that we're going to have to go after with some vigilance.
I can take that point and we can put something on the agenda for further discussion, and maybe by that point in time, Director Tyndall, I know that Director Tyndall was looking at discussing some finer points with some other treasurers around, and maybe we'll have some more to share by then. Just as an aside, they canceled joint services at county level, which should have happened next week. I'll be honest, I was disappointed in that. I think that there's still things we should be doing at county, and to be fair, the outward communication is coming from county, but we're not really afforded an opportunity to question or ask probing questions about what's going on and how things are being handled. So I have expressed my concerns with the chair of joint services as today, and some of the other mayors. So I will be asking for some more communication, but duly noted, Councillor Jameson, and we'll put it on the next agenda at council for discussion. Is there anything else that council would like to bring up previous to moving on to, oh, sorry, sorry. I'll ask council, does anybody have anything else to add to the discussion from council? Councillor Olkey, did I see you put your hand up? Okay, and then I'll take Director Goodman. Go ahead.
Just quickly, at CRCA, an issue came up about the placement of cellular towers on conservation land. There was quite a debate. The side that won, which I supported, was that on specific case by case, as approved by the board, this could happen. There were some people who wanted an absolute ban on it because they want their conservation land pristine. The line that I took along with a number of others was, that's all very well, but we have a lot of people who don't have cellular coverage, and this might facilitate that. You know, people trying to educate their kids and run businesses, and it's also possible to make a cell tower that looks like a white pine. In any case, the motion is that subject to the approval of the executive and the board of the conservation area, such things could be entertained. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Olkey. With that, does anybody have anything they need to add to the mayor's update? Something I've missed or somebody that should be noted? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just the update we just got now as far as from the IJC and the river levels. Things are optimistic.
Definitely optimistic, but hopefully cautiously optimistic at this point. So, Councillor Gorell.
Thank you, Your Worship. You and I have had a little bit of back and forth on this, but I received this past week 3 individual businesses, and maybe we all received the same letters and emails, I don't know. At any rate, there's a lot of misinformation because it takes a lot of study to understand this business of property tax, commercial tax, and so on. And I think we had talked a little bit about having a harmony in our message, or not in our message, but what is real and what is nonsense. And I really applaud that our treasurer is reaching out to upper tier and other tiers, lower tiers in our county. But perhaps we need to not have a document, I don't know how to put this together, but we need a document that's easy to read, that describes politely and kindly that what is possible, what isn't possible, what we're working on moving forward with the upper tier. Without making it a thesis, we should have perhaps something available so that people, A, understand what's possible, B, understand that moving forward, it is something that is being looked at. Otherwise, it's just more frustration. People think nothing may be done. They're pointing the fingers in the wrong directions. I don't know. It's a bit of a challenge, and maybe it's something that senior management can have a look at. Thank you.
I'll recognize CAO Donachie.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. That's an excellent suggestion, Councillor Gorell. We are starting to put together a communications piece on that for use for councillors and for people who are interested. I've done a little bit of research just scouting out if any of the other townships in the area or out there in the province actually have anything that kind of explains property taxes and what they can and can't do. Most of the sites that I've visited now, albeit it's just a handful so far, all just talk about relief from penalties and interest for a certain period of time. So they're not going into details about what their limitations are under the Municipal Act for property taxes at all. So I think that your suggestion will fill a need for people to know why we can't do things like that. So well taken. We're working on it.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, and then I think we'll move forward to the in-camera.
Apologize. I just add to the CEO's comment and Councillor Gorell's comment, just to say that if we are putting out something simple and straightforward, which would be terrific, also to remind people that we are the ones that collect taxes for other tiers, so to speak, and that's one reason why we're looking to the higher tier to be as proactive in the management of their limited resources while we collect taxes on their behalf. We need the expectation out there that they're going to do something as well, as long as our residents understand, and most of them do, that we are the collectors and the distributors of money, whether it's Conservation Authority or the county or the police, the library, and so on. And we have to look to everyone to be taking the kind of proactive approach that our own staff is taking with our budget. So I just want to leave that with our CAO in terms of explaining to our public. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Goodman, and then we'll move into the in-camera.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to take a quick moment as of Friday, May 1st, we do in fact kick off our Youth Week here in Township of Leeds in the Thousand Islands. And I just wanted to throw out a huge congratulations to our first ever Youth Bursary Award winners, Victoria, Brandon, and Madeline. Huge props to them and all the other youth who are experiencing some challenging times at home right now as they're trying to facilitate their educational pursuits, still trying to find ways of being engaged and involved. So just a huge hats off to them and a huge recognition of those who are continuing to champion and excel in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. This point is well taken. So we'll take a quick recess here, or should I put the motion on the floor and then recess, Madam Clerk? Which way okay. So I'll put the motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Foti and seconded by Councillor Maybe, that council adjourn to form in camera to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, as it pertains to HR matters. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, so we'll have a 5-minute break before we begin that part of the agenda to allow the clerk to release the participants and stop the recording or the live broadcasting, and then we'll reconvene. So that'll be great. Thank you.